Welcome to Seize the Mains by Malhotra's IS Academy. I'm Surbhi Sardana and this is season 3 of our daily answer writing initiative. So yesterday at 2:30 p.m. in our current affairs discussion for environment, we discussed a very important bill. Although the bills are not very much important from mains point of view, but this bill about changes in Wildlife Protection Act is very important. So there are high chances that UPSC might ask this question in the next mains or upcoming prelims about what are the changes that have been brought up by this bill or what are the proposed changes. This bill has been passed, this bill has been recently passed in the monsoon session of Lok Sabha. So after this discussion, if you feel that you're confident enough to share your answers to the question we are about to discuss, what you can do is click on the link in the description. It will take you to our website, which is rajisacademy.com. There in the mains answer writing section, which is here, you'll see a list of questions and you can answer the question that we are discussing today, and our team will respond back to you within a few hours with our valuable feedback. So let's get started. The question for day 35 is, highlight the amendments that Wildlife Protection Bill 2021 seeks to bring to the 1972 Act. Answer in 150 words. See, highly likely that this bill will be converted into an act very soon because the government has been pushing for it. Even if it doesn't, it is very important that you understand what are the reasons that these amendments are being brought up. So, for the introduction, we'll begin with our first paragraph, the introduction. What you can talk about is about our commitments to CITES, Convention for International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. जो भी endangered species हैं, जो कि extinct होने वाली हैं, जिनकी सस्टेनेंस पर बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट हो सकती है अगर उनका इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड कैरी आउट किया जाता है, तो उसको ये कन्वेंशन रेगुलेट करती है. एंड इंडिया हैज़ साइन दिस कन्वेंशन, इंडिया इज़ अ पार्टी टू दिस कन्वेंशन. तो उस कन्वेंशन से ज़्यादा हम लोग उस कन्वेंशन के ज़्यादा हक में हमारा वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट बने, उसलिए ये बिल लाया जा रहा है टू कंप्लाई विद द प्रोविजंस ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर कन्वेंशन. सो दिस इज़ समथिंग यू हैव टू राइट डाउन whether in introduction or your body paragraph. Secondly, what you have to write down is the constitutional provisions. So article 48A जो DPSPs का है, Directive Principles of State Policy, that actually puts a duty on the state to safeguard wildlife and forest. So either you can start your answer with this particular line, and after you have mentioned this particular provision, what you can do is talk about Wildlife Protection Act in general, कि ये करता क्या है, इसका aim क्या है, इसका motive क्या है. So let's begin with our introduction. The first one is Article 48 of the Constitution, 48A of the Constitution of India, directs the state to protect and improve the environment and safeguard wildlife and forest. See, there is a fundamental duty also on all the Indian citizens, which actually, through which we have to protect environment and ecology, but mentioning fundamental duty here, यहाँ पे article 51 अगर आप mention करते हैं, 51A mention करते हैं, that will not be of very much relevance because you are talking about a legislation. So legislation से related ही कोई constitutional provision mention कीजिए, and here we are not talking about duties of citizens, we are talking about what the state is doing. You can definitely talk about the fundamental duty of protecting wildlife in the conclusion that yes, all of us need to come together to protect wildlife and reduce the human-animal conflict or things like that. But in the introduction, make sure that you're mentioning only this particular article and not Article 51A. So the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the second line, in the second line we will explain that what does this act do. It provides for the protection of countries' wild animals, birds, plant species. You know, in wild animals, aquatic animals are also included, aquatic plants are also included. So in bracket you can write down that in order to ensure environmental and ecological security. Among other things, the Act also lays down restrictions on things which cannot be done, restrictions on hunting many animal species. So these are a part of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. If you feel that you have something unique to write about Wildlife Protection Act 1972, go ahead with it, write it in your answers and send your answers to us. Now the linkage point will come here only with the introduction, or what you can do is, since your introduction is ending here, your linkage point should start here, and don't write the heading linkage point, just write one line which will separate the introduction from the body paragraph. So recent bill seeks to bring some important changes to the 1972 Act. Yes, for sure. They can be studied under the following heads or titles. So the first thing is that the bill seeks to increase the number of protected species of plants and animals. So first is about increase the species protected under this particular act, and to implement this convention CITES that we studied about in our introduction. The second amendment is that currently Wildlife Protection Act has 6 schedules, 6 schedules है Wildlife Protection Act 1972 में, but उसको 6 से कम करके 4 किया जा रहा है. What are these 6 schedules? We'll briefly see. The first one is for specially protected plants. One schedule is there for specially protected plants, 4 are there for protected animals, and 1 is there for vermin species. Vermin species are the small animals that carry disease and destroy food. For example, monkeys can be declared vermin in a particular area by a state if they are destroying agriculture or attacking people. So vermin के लिए एक special provision है, एक special schedule है. Now the new bill, or consequently the new act will have only 4 schedules. It will reduce the number of schedules for specially protected animals to 2. सिर्फ 2 schedules होंगे, 4 से 2 कर दिए जाएंगे protected animals के लिए. The next one is it removes the schedule for vermin species. So probably vermin species will be covered under these only, or they will not be covered under this act. So also the third and most important one, it will have a 4th schedule. जो चौथा schedule होगा, it will have those species which are not covered under Wildlife Protection Act but जो कि CITES में covered है. CITES covers the international trade of species. So some species could be there in other countries also, and international trade could be carried out through India or in India. So all those species will be listed in the 4th schedule. So it inserts a new schedule for specimens listed in the appendices under CITES. So specimens of those species, for example some body parts, some horns, or fur, things like that, some specimens will be listed under this particular schedule. Now the next one is obligations under CITES. CITES regulates the international trade of species. Now to regulate that, there should be some national authority also. कोई authority India में बैठी होनी चाहिए, कोई authority दूसरी countries में बैठी होनी चाहिए to regulate that trade, जो कि monitor करे कि illegal trade कहाँ हो रहा है, किस चीज़ को रोकने की ज़रूरत है, किस चीज़ को certification या protection की requirement है. So there are 2 authorities that have been proposed. The first one is the Management Authority, which will give export or import permits for trade of these species. It may use an identification mark also. Whatever species are being imported or exported, the management authority might use an identification mark on those, and this identification mark cannot be removed by the exporter or importer, or modifying is not allowed. The second one is scientific authority. Scientific authority का basically research and data analysis का काम होगा. It will give advice on aspects related to impact on the survival of the specimens being traded. So जिन स्पीशीज़ का ट्रेड हो रहा है उनके सर्वाइवल पर क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है, टू डिक्रीज दैट इम्पैक्ट is the main motive of CITES. So to comply with CITES, obligations under CITES, to comply with CITES, this second authority has been proposed, which will conduct research and give advices to the government that which species should be traded or not traded, seeing the impact that it is having on their survival. The next one, and one of the most important one, is about invasive alien species. See, काफ़ी plants होते हैं, काफ़ी animals होते हैं, especially aquatic animals, because through trade, ballast water के through aquatic fishes होती है, कुछ fishes होती हैं जो कि एक continent से दूसरे continent पहुंच जाती हैं, and they can serve as invasive species in the other continent. So what happens is that they spoil the local biodiversity. Sometimes there are plants which actually take up nutrients from the soil, and local biodiversity, local plants के लिए ज़्यादा nutrients नहीं बचते, so the local biodiversity dies out, local trees and plants die out, while this new species which is not even beneficial to people, for example अगर एक tree आपको कुछ fruits दे रहा है, तो if that species, if that dies out because of some invasive alien species, then it is not in favor of the people residing there or the ecology of that place. So plant or animal species which are not native to India and whose introduction may adversely impact wildlife or its habitat, these are known as invasive species. The central government may authorize an officer to seize and dispose, take under control and dispose of these invasive species. This will be given by the central government. The in charge will be central government and they'll authorize an officer. The bill empowers the central government to regulate or prohibit the import, trade, possession or proliferation of these invasive alien species. The next one is control of sanctuaries or wildlife sanctuaries. So this control will be vested in the state wildlife warden, chief wildlife warden of the state, and the chief wildlife warden appointed by is appointed by the state government, and actions of this chief wildlife warden, they must be in accordance with the management plans for that particular sanctuary. And if it is a specialized area means special areas, for example the areas which are covered under this 2006 Act, the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act, or the areas which are covered under Schedule 5, which aim to protect the rights of indigenous people and their rights to stay in those forest area in the pristine environment. तो वहाँ पर ग्राम सभा की recommendation ली जाएगी that how protection of sanctuaries has to be carried out. Then there is a provision of conservation reserves that around any protected area, whether it is a national park or wildlife sanctuary, the central government or the state government can declare the surrounding area as conservation reserve to protect the flora and fauna. Then again very important is about the surrender of captive animals. Surrender of captive animals, for example, if somebody has kept an animal or a bird or in captivity with himself or herself, then they can give up on that animal. They can go to the state government or the chief wildlife warden and just say that yes, now I give up on this animal. Penalties will not be there, but that person will not be paid also, and from that day onwards that animal will be the property of the state government. Now the penalties. Earlier जो Wildlife Protection Act के under penalties थी, they were very low. Now they have been revised from around 25,000 to 1 lakh. And for violating the provisions meant for specially protected animals, the previous fine was about 10,000. It has been raised up to 25,000. So these were the broad provisions. Keep in touch with whatever the happenings are going with regards to this particular bill, because it is very important from all exams, from point of view of all the exams. In the conclusion, since it was a very direct question, a 150 words answer, so either you can skip the conclusion paragraph, just write 2 lines. What you can say is that yes, these amendments will go a long way in protecting the biodiversity of the country, but there have been recommendations by the standing committee about this bill that human-animal conflict has to be addressed. So there should be a separate committee in every state government to address the human-animal conflict, to reduce that. So if you have been reading newspapers, you can give such recommendations in the conclusion or way forward. And most importantly, you can talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. 14, Sustainable Development Goal 14 is about life underwater, and Sustainable Development Goal 15 is about life on land. So you can relate these Sustainable Development Goals, you can relate our international commitments, and then you can form a nice conclusion. So this was your full answer. Refer to the website rajisacademy.com to read the whole answer that has been discussed. Also, we eagerly wait for your answers. Post your answers in the comment section to this question. The link is there in the description below. We'll see you with another discussion tomorrow.